The Long Way Home, Chapter 41, Among the Star Tides.
So it really is that easy. You say family meet family, and that's it.
Cadet asked as he fumbled to hold a current RNI carbine with freshly printed furniture to fit his Corvian frame correctly. Aye and no, Jason answered as he gently corrected the angle at which Cadet held the weapon. So far as the family is concerned, you're in. We still have to make it legal, though. There's a couple ways we could do it. But the fastest would probably be finding a Star Sailor magistrate. I guess a judge in the Republic or a CIP could help us too, but judges don't usually do that sort of legal work. Any which way, this is an in-person kind of legal thing, and even in the Republic we'd be going to a DOR to file everything. Cadet squeezed the trigger as Jason was still trying to sort through his own explanation. The slug of ferrous material didn't quite break the sound barrier, but on the range that wouldn't have mattered much anyway. In any case, even this lower velocity weapon had more recoil than Cadet was prepared to deal with. The shot went wide. Cadet clicked his beak at the target at the 10-yard mark with irritation. It still showed no hits.
Could anybody stop it happening?
I guess so. There are laws that stop people from kidnapping kids to raise their own, but Jason trailed off as Cadet's feathers sticked close in.
But I ran away from my mom who didn't care enough to notice,
Cadet said as he squeezed off another round. It went wide of the target. Jason blew through his teeth and leaned against their lanes dividing wall before he said, "Well, that's one way to put things."
Are you okay?
Cadet asked, and Jason was once again bemused with a habit of jumping from topic to topic. Not so bemused as he was by Cadet's next shot hitting the bullseye of the target in the lane up to their left. Its occupant let out a sudden bark of laughter and called out something about taking credit for the shot. "Maybe not, but I can regulate. Talking about that, turns out I kind of got used to sharing sleeping quarters. You mind if I drag my mattress into your cabin?" The soft whirring and clicking of the mag-axe from the lanes to the left and right of them played point and counterpoint with ferrous material striking the sandbags stacked along the far wall, almost like a home thing. Cadet missed the target again. It looked to Jason almost like he came nearer to hitting it this time.
"Sure,"
Cadet said, as he glared at the target as if it was to blame for his aim.
"I guess you don't want to be alone with your thoughts."
"Something like that," Jason admitted. He didn't see any point in keeping up a brave face now that they were all but home.
"It's not fair. You need another you, and I'm not like you, and can't do the stuff you do,"
Cadet grumbled as he squeezed off another round. That, too, missed. "I don't follow," Jason said slowly, as he tried to pass that. "I mean, you wish you could talk me through things the way that I do for you. Then thanks. Don't worry about not having done it. If it's something you want to be good at, you have to practice."
"How do you even start practicing basically magic?"
Cadet grumbled before changing subjects abruptly again.
"Did you find out anything about Vi?"
"Spinal surgeries are tricky," Jason carefully told him. "I wish my mom was here. She is as really good as they say, which isn't to say that Dr. Yovquix isn't very good too. It's just my mom is the best. They said that she can get the use of her legs and tail back, but actually walking and swimming again will take time. And work. Time and work." Jason's voice trailed off as he began to think about the phrase before he shook himself again. "She'll probably be out of surgery in a couple hours."
"I was watching when the doctors called her parents. She's going to leave us, isn't she? She really has a family to get back to."
"That's the thing about cousins," Jason said reassuringly. "Just because they don't all live in the home ship with you doesn't mean they aren't still family. There will be visits and calls, and we'll get a server going for a game we all like."
I guess so,"
Cadet said. He fired again. He hit the target, nowhere near the bullseye, but less than a quarter inch from its edge. But he hit it. Among the star tides we rage thumped beneath Jason's feet. She was more sorrowful, more full of joy, but Jason could feel her fury rise. She was a warship, not a home ship, after all. A ship for the clans rather than of them. And she was angry that a clan ship had been touched, and clan crew had been hurt. However, in the lane with Cadet, there was a calm and comfort in that anger. "See," Jason said, "practice." Vincent found he quite liked the enlisted mess. It reminded him of his days in Her Majesty's Royal Navy, which wasn't to say that the officers' mess was as stuffy as the others he'd seen, but officers in any military are afflicted with an inability to relax unless actually on liberty or leave. The enlisted knew how to snatch at a chance when they got it. Besides, the coffee in the officers' mess wasn't any better than the enlisted. It was starkly furnished, but not uncomfortable. with a utilitarian attention in the difference in height between the various kinds of biological Terran crew and the Starsailors or the odd other Lightwalder. There was an equal utilitarian attention to the differences in weight and density, as the furniture meant for the use by Terrans was sturdier in addition to being smaller, and Vincent sometimes wondered whether these enlisted had a brawl for fun like he and his mates did during his 4 years. They got raucous enough on the evening. However, he wasn't there to watch the enlisted blow off steam. He was there for coffee and chat. The watch had just changed over, so tired boatsmen and troopers tromped in to gulp down a dinner of eggs and bacon before they snatched some sack time, or else enjoyed their alcohol rations. Some of them took their ration as liquor dumped into coffee, and Vincent found himself envying them for their youth, if not their choice of beverage. He was quietly grateful that somebody had let the galley know that he didn't want any alcohol, and didn't need to politely decline. He was also quite grateful that Lord Admiral Brixton had ignored his mutterings about preferring to handle things on his own and sent directions to a meeting of sobriety group aboard. Then again, neither of the night watch nor his own struggles had anything to do with the chat he wanted to have. Or maybe chats. One of the people he wanted to talk to came in with the morning watch crew, mainly dragging themselves to the race-appropriate hot stimulants on offer, coffee for Terrans, and a strange mushroom tincture for others. Rose was a morning person, apparently, since she got her coffee with that brightly cheerful bounce in her step that morning people inflict normal people with. Her cheer wasn't diminished as she slid into the sturdy, comfortable chair across the table from Vincent and took a long sip of her steaming mug. "Good morning," she chimed at him. Vincent suppressed a grin as he replied, as he was becoming his habit with her, "It's morning. Let's see if there's anything good about it." "Well, you're here, so that's a start." Vincent snorted and retorted, "Bad start." "You ought to dye your fur green and live in a trash can, you old grouch," Rose said in a poor imitation of scolding. He was spoiled by her giggling. Vincent waved his hand in front of himself as if he could batter away her laughter and took a sip of his own coffee. The galley master knew what he or she was about. "The grouches would kick me out for being too grumpy," he said, finally letting the humor touch his voice. "God only knows why you put up with me." "Oh, hush," she said, with something that more closely approached scolding. "You're a nice man, Vincent. You can grump all you want, but I know what you're like when the chips are down." That remark drew attention to how she looked. Rose wore what looked like a duty uniform for a voidsman without any rank or qualifications or awards, and while it was cut to fit a dog or woman, it hung loosely on her shoulders, as if it had been made in anticipation of a more well-muscled frame. She wasn't looking anywhere, so gaunt as she had, but her freedom was less than a week old. Scant time to put flesh back on hungry bones. Scant time to also regrow her shaved coat of fur. But there were medicines and creams to speed that along. Those seemed to be working somewhat, but her fur was hardly thick enough to be called a coat yet. She looked better than she had, but even so, it wrung Vincent's heart. "I guess so," Vincent said somberly. She furrowed her brow at him. Then a light of recognition flashed in her eyes. "Thank you," she told him, with an equal solemnity. "I said it before, but I can't say it enough. Thank you." Vincent coughed. There seemed to be something stuck in his throat for some reason. That's not worth talking about. Listen, Lawrence said that he'd be by this morning to tell me how things are going to go." He felt awkward, changing the subject so abruptly. But it was better than listening to the woman tell him what a hero he was again. "The Anvil?" "Yeah," he said. "Haven't you met him yet?" "Honestly," she said, as she laid her ears back sheepishly and twisted her mug on the table, "I'm a little nervous about meeting any of them." "They don't bite." "Easy for you to say," Rose said as she rolled her eyes at him. "You're Vincent the Victorious. People are already making up all kinds of crazy stories about you. What if I asked about one of the stories where the hammer and the anvil smash pirates between them, and the anvil tells me that it was made up? I'd look like an idiot fangirl." Vincent sputtered and coughed. Hot coffee wasn't supposed to go down that way. "Vincent the what?" People who'd never been among military men might have missed it. The slight stiffening of posture, the minuscule quieting of conversation, the occasional flick of gazes, all in the same direction. Rose was someone who hadn't quite spent the time among military types to notice that she'd started in. "They're saying online that you're the George family hound, more than they are just your humans. There's a rumor going around that they've been on your family humans going all the way back before the uplift." "That's the way of things," Major General retired Lawrence, the Anvil George, said sadly as he slid into a chair beside Rose, politely ignoring both Vincent's pained groan and her shocked sputtering. "Someone in the family does something anybody with little courage and lack would do, and it gets blown out of proportion. I'm sorry it touched you so soon. I always knew it wasn't up to me, Vincent said. What other people think. It still throws me for a loop, though. Lawrence shrugged and took a sip of his own coffee. Then he mused, Well, that's the right way to look at things. Jason told me you're a Catholic. Most of the family is, even on the Starsailor side of things. They tend to be more reserved, though. The point is, we do have a chaplain to hold mass and take confessions aboard. Not a priest, mind you, since everybody fights, everybody works, but the church did authorize him. Thanks, Vincent grunted, and savored another sip of coffee, and the feel of the room relaxing again. The men were used to a retired major general spending time in their mess. I'm glad that you're here, Rose, the legend went on, and just as he was a normal person as anybody else. Vincent supposed that he really was as normal as anybody else. Paul felt that way, whatever he's done. What you told the medical team about where, anyway, it was enough to go on. My wife, Vincent was a little startled by how much the pride ringing in those two words came warm his old heart, has managed to find your little sister. The pirates left her for dead, but I figure you're all her strong folk. She kept her life, and Iris says she's more than happy you're alive, too. She'll be there when we meet up for the Among the Startides we sing. Rose's eyes bulged further and further as Lawrence explained things until she breathed, we sing? A lot of people don't know, and are disappointed to find out when they step aboard, the grandfatherly old man said. She wears the name on a new hull. The ship that Terrence made their first friends with the Starsailors is still entombed in the orbit of Terra herself. It's a tradition for us to not let ship names die, even when she's killed. Oh, but still she's an important ship, Rose said, as if trying to catch her breath. Every home ship is important. Every clan ship is important, Lawrence said. Speaking of, the long way is in the rolls, and another hull will wear her name one day. Vincent found that he had to speak past a lump in his throat. Thank you, but her hull is good. A new reactor will make her a new ship, with a new heart, and you, I think, are done wandering alone between the stars. Lawrence finished for him. But anyway, we'll be meeting up with the We Sing in 3 or 4 days, and we'll get some time to greet the people that we've been missing. After that, it's the formal homecoming, a bit more stuffy than I'd like, but rituals are sometimes more for the people watching than the people in them. People care about Jason, and they want to see him welcomed home, so we'll do it in the Starsailor way. Besides, the Long Way gave her life to bring you all home. She should be honored. Vincent found himself nodding along to the explanation, and when it turned to explaining the explanation of the homecoming ceremony itself and his part in it, he listened intently. It took only 3 days, by ship's clock, for the anticipated rendezvous. Plenty of time to settle into something close to relaxation like Jason and Vincent, or to screw themselves into anxious knots like Cadet and Isis Magdalene, which left Vi bouncing between both ends of those moods. She settled somewhere in the middle whenever she focused on physical therapy, or rather both nerves and relaxation relented in her determined grit to be able to stand during the ceremony. She had confided to Vincent that she viewed altering the gown Isis Magdalene had sewn for her to accommodate the wheelchair to be a tantamount to ruination. Jason ferreted that same admission out of her by joking companionably while she was in the recovery area of the ship's medbay about pushing herself too hard. Feeling pretty was important to her, so he took the problem to Tundra and suggested printing up a set of braces that wouldn't stick out like ripped sails. She seized on that line and hauled over all she was worth, and in things like that, she was worth more than a little. The Boydsmen in engineering were startled, amused, and indulgent of her, but even if they weren't, she would have gotten what she wanted from them from pure force of will. They had used the time they had to get ready as they could. When those 3 days were up, and the unmistakable clamour of ship-to-ship docking shuddered through the wee-rage, Jason surprised himself. For all of his being past his halfway and hefting a man's burdens on his young shoulders, his feet beat a path through the warship to the forward port airlock without delay. Now, on the point of hamming them to hand again at last, his heart ached for his mother and father's, as any boy's would in his shoes. He wasn't the only one. Chandra healed him eagerly, while Cadet and Isis Magdalene were torn between hurrying to keep up and hanging back, fighting to overcome nerves. And Vi was pushing along in a wheelchair by an orderly she wasn't able to escape. She kicked at the footrest irritably as they waited for the readout on the airlock hatch to give the all clear. Jason bounced on the balls of his feet. Chandra stared at the readout as she could will it to open faster. Isis Magdalene regarded the hatch with a mixture of relief and apprehension, and Cadet muttered about meeting so many new people. The readout flashed the all clear in green letters. The hatch buzzed and swung open inward, but Jason didn't wait for it to stop. He was through the hatch and sprinting down the short umbilical between the airlocks with his eyes fixed on Maxwell George. He didn't stop when he reached his father. He barreled through the sturdy man and sent him staggering a few steps back as he struggled to embrace his son at long last and keep his feet. Jason's arms didn't quite wrap all the way around his father, but he squeezed for all he was worth anyway. But Jason couldn't hear them. He was busy tearing his eye from his father's beaming face to find his mother. And Bridget George was there too, weeping. The boy let go of his father with one arm to invite his mother into the embrace, and Jason found himself crushed between them. He could hear some of the words now. My boy, and you're home, and you made it, and praise God, among other things. He heard another thing too. The Among the Startites who sing thrummed beneath his feet. She filled the boy's ears with the sound of home. Vincent arrived at the airlock just in time to see the Chief and Tundra dart through in a sprint. He found himself smiling at their joy as he caught up to Cadet and Isis Magdalene, who were hanging back with Vi, who was casting an impatient look at the orderly behind her. The young big kitty man seemed impervious to her glares, since he waited for the hatch to fully open before he began to push it through, which gave Vincent time to reach the other two and gather them with a hand on each shoulder. They started forward with a gentle push, and Cadet barely glued himself to Vincent's side while Isis Magdalene made a decent attempt for regal serenity. "Nervous?" the old man asked softly, as the other end of the umbilical cord erupted in joy as the two runners reached their kid.
"But what if they don't like me?"
Cadet asked quietly, nearly too quietly to be heard. Isis Magdalene had admitted it. "Impossible," she declared, and at his narrowed eye glance on her, she said,
"You are the kind all good people will like once they let them in."
"If the Chief's family is anything like the Chief, they'll give you a shot," Vincent whispered in the adoptive son's ear. The boy clicked his beak and puffed his feathers out as he squared his shoulders. Vincent gave him an encouraging squeeze. "What about you, little lady?"
"I've grown used to our privacy, of no charges having need of me," she mumbled. "I fear I have not grown in courage or wisdom despite such fine examples on our journey."
"That is a problem when you're a woman grown," Vincent said. "Today, it's just us and our families." And with those words, they were in a cacophony of joy. The George family had, unsurprisingly, filled up most of the available space, and most of the rest of it was taken up by towering blue-skinned four-armed star sailors, who were as much family as anybody named George. Although one of those only spared Jason one of his hands, a brief touch, and a glance from the embrace he had around Tundra. Vincent could add 2 and 2 without coming up 6, and concluded that the man was a father. All the rest, except the man and woman who the Chief had nearly crushed between them, split their attention between the two children. Men, women, kids of many ages. And Vincent wasn't surprised when the Georges they'd already met when the wee rage came behind his little party. They joined in the knot of welcome home, and there were a few women whose faces told of the relief at husbands come home. Among them, Rear Admiral retired Iris the Hammer George. She was a wall of dignified gravity, spoiled somewhat by how fondly she gazed upon the scene before her. Standing apart, more quietly but no less joyful, were 4 Latreille. 5. Once Vi met them in her wheelchair with her orderly, a man, a woman, and 2 young pups. The pups crawled up into her chair gingerly to bury their faces in their sister's shirt, while the man and woman clasped her hands and pressed their foreheads against the sides of her head between them while she tried to return the gesture to all 4 of them at once. The pups made squeals of delight, mingled with sobs of the same, while her parents tried to tell her how glad they were to have her back through their own tears and sobs, while the girl just repeated, "I love you, I love you, I love you," as she twisted and squirmed as far as she was able to touch and grasp and embrace the family she'd pined for in the night watches on the long journey home. Meanwhile, an exarch man and woman stood with regal poise apart from the both Georges and Vi's families, joy awaiting Isis Magdalene. She glided towards them with a trembling poise, and all 3 of them, with solemn faces, broke into warm smiles once she was in arm's reach. Her mother bent down and drew a finger down her cheek and along her jaw, and her father did the same on the other side. Before their hands left her voice fully, the girl gently grasped their fingers, and they said some quiet words together. The girl's noble father let tears roll from unblinking eyes, as if he feared his daughter would disappear if he blinked. Even so, they sat down on the floor together in a tight circle, all gently holding hands. If those 2 didn't shine with pride in their daughter, Vincent would buy a hat just to eat it. Vincent would have been content to stand there and drink it all in. But Cadet showed no sign of stirring from his side. He was just deciding to begin working their way towards Jason and Chandra. And when a young George cousin said,
JJ, why are you wearing an eye patch?
Vincent could have heard a hair snap. The chief found himself with a little more room to breathe and said, "It was the price I had to pay to keep a promise." Everyone in the George family old enough to understand suddenly had sorrow, no, grief mingled with their joy. Vincent felt it break over the gathering like a wave. Then something strange happened. The hammer glared at the amble, who gave his wife a serene look. The grey-haired patriarch held the hard, flat-eyed gaze of a matriarch, and it was she who relented. Lawrence George knelt down to kiss his grandson on the forehead and intoned, "Let me be the wind at your back. Your honor is family honor." Then everyone, Georges and Starsailors alike, did the same. The chief looked somewhere between relieved and somber at the small ceremony, a repetition of what had happened a week earlier with what looked like the whole family, or as much of it could be peeled away from duty. Then the grandfather locked eyes with Vincent and said, "Family, meet family." His gesture took in the whole room, and as simply as that, Vincent and Cadet were enveloped with Vi and Isis Magdalene along with their families. At some point, Colonel Maxwell, the loyal George, was clasping Vincent's hand in a vice and saying, "Brother, I'm so glad you made it home with Jason. I'm so happy to finally meet you." "I'm glad to meet you too, brother," Vincent found himself saying. It didn't feel the slightest bit awkward to call Max the loyal brother. It felt right. "Sorry it took us so long. We took the long way home." End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.